Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Almanac The Crystal Peaks, which is a sequel to Almanac The Dragon Road. And yeah, they look almost like they're the same game. That's because they're really similar. In fact, well, I don't like these covers. These covers look boring as all get out. The name doesn't tell you anything. Almanac The Dragon Road, Almanac The Crystal Peaks. But what Almanac is, and I'm going to show my hand here, is a very good worker placement game. As you play through a book and each one changes. So this is just a variation on the first. There's a tiny expansion that lets you play them both together. Not worth your time. But if you like the first one, you like this one. If you've never played the first one, this one is worth your while getting into. Let me start from scratch and tell you how it plays. Each person is going to start with their own little caravan here. This shows the defense, which starts at 1. The number of workers that you have. So you start with 3 out of a possible 6 workers. You also start with some money and a shield, which you'll use occasionally throughout the course of the game. Players are going to be playing through a book. At the beginning of the rules, it shows you kind of how all these different locations connect to each other. That's not really that big of a deal. What's more important is looking at this book, because what players are going to do is on your turn, you're going to be placing a worker on the board and taking the action of the space there. Now, each page in this book, that I just told you, like the most basic, you put a worker down, but each page has some special rules. So for example, in this one, it says if you place someone in one market, my next worker has to go to one of the connected markets. So I'd have to go in one of these yellows or in one of these greens to go there. And then after I place this one, I would need to go to another connected one. Now, what do these different spots on the board do? Some spots give you one of the 4 different types of goods. So this one gives me 2 yellows and a blue. Now the original game, the base game, comes with little tokens for each. I have some upgraded pieces for my game, but you're going to put them in your wagon, and you only have so many spaces to put goods in your wagon. There are 2 main reasons you want to get these goods. You have contracts in your hand that require a certain number of goods. And when you play these contracts, they're going to give you points at the end of the game when you complete them. And they also give you special ability. This one says when you take a sell goods action, get an extra gold for every one of the yellow goods sold. After you gain at least 1 blue from a gain goods action, you also get a red. So if you have a contract and you're ready to fulfill it, one of the spots on the board, you can see it right here, or there might be more of them, lets you fulfill a contract. You go to that space, you spend the resources, and you fulfill a contract. Another way you can spend resources is by extending your caravan, which is this spot here. Next to the board, there will be some caravan, wagons, and you can see each of these has a cost on them, plus money. Money is a resource in this game. So you'll pay that much. You'll place the caravan behind your wagon, and you'll get the points there at the end of the game. Sometimes the caravan, like this one here, also adds to your shields, and this one gives me another one of my 3 extra workers. So maybe that's one I want to get. So caravans can give you points and or more workers. A few other spots that are on the board, if you go to these spots, you can sell goods for the amount of money that's there. So for example, if I went here, I could sell as many green goods as I want for 3 gold each. Then there is the shop token, which is right here. When you go to the shop token, you have 3 different things you can do. You can get rid of any type of goods for 3 gold each. You can gain 1 good of your choice, or you can gain a guard token. A guard token, which is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game, but also gives you 2 defense to your caravan. After everyone has placed their workers, everyone's going to retrieve them, and then players are going to secretly bid gold from their hand to see who's going to be the next guide. Whoever has the most gold is going to be the winner. They get the guide token, and they pay money equal to the lowest amount that anyone's bid. So if someone's bid just 1, hey, then that's all that the winner has to pay. The winner then is going to pick which of the next 2 locations you'll go to. So you can see from location number 1, you can go to location number 2 or location number 3. And each of these locations basically tells you how much goods there is. So the farther they are here to the left, the more valuable the goods will be able to be sold for. And the farther they are to the right, Well, that's how many more goods will be available at that location. Players will also encounter an encounter card. There are different encounter cards in the game, A, B, C, D, and E. You'll pick one randomly from each letter as you go through them. These encounters will start with the guide usually, and you'll do something. Here you need to roll a certain number of dice and you get a reward or not. Sometimes you need to fight something, and when that's the case, you're going to be using your defense that you have on your caravan, plus you'll roll an extra die that might give you more defense. And if someone defeats it, the guide always goes first, then they might get a reward. If you lose to it, you'll lose something. So if you defeat this, you get 2 blue resources. If you lose, you discard a good. And this is an easy one. You're fighting an acid butterfly, which is not particularly difficult, but as the game goes by, you might face something like this nasty beast, the Dungeon Meisler. And that's like on letter E, but hopefully you have time to build up your defense before then. Players then go to the next location as picked, and again, every location is going to have various things. Many of the locations come with extra pieces. So like for example, this location at Cliffside, you're going to have a chance. You see these little ladder pieces. You'll be placing ladders. You're starting at the bottom and building up. And every one of these will have different rules of the place, and many of them come with extra components. And you won't see all of them over the course of the game. Like for example, if you go to Silver Falls, you will then go to 14 or 15. And you're probably not going to 12 or 13. And then 14 and 15, you go to 18 or 19. Every one of these has different things. Some of them have unique spaces that you can see. And when you get to the end, you have the ability just to get a whole lot of points at the end of the game, because that is how things end. At this point, you're trying to finish all your contracts. There are some spaces where you can take more contracts. You are trying to maybe build out your caravan or just sell resources for as much gold as you can, because at the end of the game, all the gold you have is worth 1 point. Your caravan cards, location tokens, guards, encounter cards, completed contracts, they're all worth points, but incomplete contracts are worth negative points. You better finish this, because minus 28 points is a lot of negative points. And whoever has the most is the winner of the game. Okay, so this one is very similar to the first one, but the rules on each page are going to be different than the first book. So there's a whole booklet, and there's 18 different scenarios that you'll play through. 18 or 20, I forget how many there is, but there's a lot. And so in this one, the rules are different. Now, because some of the most basic stuff was done in the first one, they start getting a little esoteric here. Like, hey, we're using ladders to climb up from one spot to another. Oh, there's ice flows. And so if you would like that little bit more complication, you'll like this one better as opposed to the first. Now, if you've never played the first one, I really like this game. I really enjoy the idea of flipping through a book. I wish more games did this sort of thing, because it's fun. It's like a changing board. And each time you look at this board and you go, ooh, what am I going to do? Now, the game is an economy game, basically, where you are buying resources or taking resources. You need to have room for them. You have to determine how many workers you want to get, or do you just want to go for straight points? You probably want at least one of your extra workers, but if you try to get all 6, yeah, that gives you more options to do things. But because of the weird, funky rules of each page, you may not even get to place them all. And I think that part's interesting. You have to decide, I'll buy a bunch of red. Do I even have room in my caravan? I need to buy more of these things to store it in. But you want to complete your contracts. You want to complete them as quickly as possible. And then when you take each contract, you want to make sure that you can finish that. The game has a lot of good strategy in. There's very little luck, except, and this is the one small weakness of the game, or maybe it's not a weakness depending on what you are, those encounter cards in between. They're random. You don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes the randomness I found to be annoying, because let's say it's a dragon that comes in and attacks you all. Okay, well, you can build up your strength and you might be able to fight it, or you might not. It depends. But if you fail against it, it might say, lose all your red resources. Well, I have 3 red resources and a yellow, and Joe has 3 blue resources and a green. That doesn't affect him at all, and it definitely affects me. Carol might have all red resources, and it completely destroys her. And I found that to be a little, it can be annoying. Now, you could argue and say, hey, build up your defense, but it's not that particularly easy. Now, that doesn't happen often, but it's possible. And there is that randomness of dice rolling that might bother some people in those encounter cards. Honestly, I think you could just skip the encounter cards and the game would still work fine. But it does add flavor. The game is kind of themeless without it. I mean, there's a little bit of theme on each page, like, oh, we're building ladders to go up and ice flows and hot air balloons or whatever. But that theme really comes from those encounter cards. But they also add the only kind of randomness in the game. And when I played this with people, both versions, they have been the most divisive part of the game. In fact, if you go way, way back and see when we first played this live on Ice Hour, I lost the game, I think, because of a bad encounter card. That being said, I still really like the game. I like the economy. You know, I'm a big economic game fan, and like, ooh, I'll buy these greens for 3 on this, or I'll just take a bunch of greens, and the next page I'm selling them for 6. Okay, are they worth more at 6? Or 2 greens and 3 yellows gives me 28 points here. Oh, what should I do? That's good. All that stuff comes together in a very fun, interesting game. And each page, you don't play through every page of the book in each game. In fact, I would say, depending on how you play, you always play that first page. But after that first page, depending on how you play, you could play 3 or 4 games in a row and not see the same stuff. But also you might, because again, the person who's the guide picks which page you go to next. It's an interesting idea. I don't know that there needed to be 2 of these games. I'm going to see if I can combine them into one box. But, you know, and I'm not going to tell you, don't email me and say, which one should I get? Basically, it works this way. This one's simpler, the Dragon Road. This one's slightly more complex. Depending on which one interests you, that's which one you should get. But I think they're both good. I'll give the Crystal Peaks an 8 out of 10. I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.